Cage Titans 58, because that was one of the best cards, again, that you guys put on since I've started coming to the show, and that's credit to the fighters that you mentioned earlier. Two great fights at the top of the card, and just a full day of awesome fights. But before the fights, one thing I did notice you guys do that I don't remember you guys ever doing was the addition of Maddie Levine, and how you guys incorporate her into some of the interviews and getting the crowd involved. Is that something you guys want to continue doing?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, and we actually just had a conference call with Maddie 2 days ago, and she's coming back for Cage Titans 59. Maddie's somebody that I've been a fan of from afar for a little while now, and what stands out to me about Maddie is that she's very true to what we are as Cage Titans. Like, Cage Titans, like, we're built on people who have fought before, or who have trained and been there. Like, we know what it takes to be a fighter. And, Maddie has been in there and competed, and she's very knowledgeable on the sport. The timing has never really worked out. I'm kind of the guy, like, I'm protective of Cage Titans from a standpoint, like, like, if you want to do stuff for other promotions, like, I'll be hands off. Like, she commentated for CES. So I'm like, you know what? I would never step on their toes. I would never reach out to her. Even with fighters, I won't. If you fight predominantly for a promotion, Ross Hilton, who's in the main event, he was like, oh man, I was always curious. How come I never heard from Cage Titans? And I'm like, respectfully, like, you're in Maine, you fight for NEF, and like, I would think it'd be disrespectful to reach out to you and try to pull you away. Circle back to Maddie, it was like she was with CES, so I kind of always was like, yeah, I'm a fan, but yeah, she's there. I'm not going to ever cross that road. And coincidentally, I saw that she was with Fight Bananas. I kind of saw that she was freelancing. She didn't do the last CES event, and I said, hey, I think you have some great talent. If you're not there with CES, or you're kind of all doing a little everything, I want to do a vision that I have that's completely different what you're doing over there. I'm not looking to steal their ideas or anything like that. I want you to do this role. My vision is like the Megan O'Leary type thing. And I think what's great is that, I don't want to just throw a pretty face out there. Like, I want somebody that has some substance and some knowledge behind it. And I think she's the perfect fit. That last show, we had one call before that. And we just kind of, like, everybody, it was me, her, and Nick. And we just kind of spitballed a bunch of ideas. And we were like, you know what? We don't really know what we're going to do on fight day, but we all kind of had some good ideas. Let's figure it out and see where it goes. And that day, I was supposed to have a camera guy following her and a light guy following her. One of our cameras shit the bed, so, like, we didn't have a camera to follow her. It seemed like everything was just not going to work out. And she was just a true professional. She's like, listen, I'm in radio. Like, we are the kings of winging it. She's like, we'll figure it out. She's like, if I have to stay in this one spot, because she couldn't roam the crowd with the roaming camera, she would figure it out. And she was amazing. We had so much good feedback. So that was just something that came to fruition last show, and she's definitely going to be around in the future, especially on May 27th. We have some even better ideas. The biggest thing about Cage Titans, I'll tell you, if you were at Cage Titans 58, and you were at Cage Titans 57 or 56 or any of that, we are always trying to add something a little different than what we've done before. And sometimes they're major things, like when we got the lighting truss and new lights. Sometimes it's a little different walkout. Sometimes it's different music or speakers. Ad addition of Maddie Levine was our ad for last show, and we're continuing looking to improve, and we're going to tweak. And I think that's what also helps separate us. We talked about that in the beginning of the show. I learned a long time in business, like, if you did something and it was successful yesterday, a year ago, or 5 minutes ago, or 1 minute ago, the next time you do it, just because it was successful, doesn't mean you shouldn't try to improve upon it. So I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to add something new, and not just be content. Like, all right, cool, Cage Titans 58 was a success. Let's just duplicate that and call it a day. No, that's not what we stand for at Cage Titans. We're always trying to raise that bar. And, I say it, and I truly believe it. It's not just cliche. We raise our own bar every time. Like, we're not competing with anybody else. We look ourselves in the mirror. Our drive is within. It's just like, how can we make our Cage Titans event a little better and a little better and a little better and a little better? And that's really what we're doing.
And it keeps on getting better, man. And last thing on Maddie, I think she's awesome at what she does, and you guys' incorporation was, I thought, was awesome in the last show, and I look forward May 27th to see how you guys try to make that even better. But 58 still. Last question: co-main and main event were two absolute bonker fights, and I just kind of want to get your thoughts on the four guys that stepped in there and put on awesome performances.
Man, I can't tell you. We've had some great fights over the year, over the years. Come to mind Chris Snyder and Chris O'Brien, Brian Rossi and John Duma, coincidentally. Probably the first number one and number two fights I've ever seen happen in Cage Titans. And then in Cage Titans 58, we just blow it out of the water. We probably have the two best fights that we've ever had. If it's just insane. It was like going into that card, we lost the Joe Giannetti main event, which a lot of people were a little bummed out about. And it's like, oh, shit. We lost the main event, but we knew we had such a stacked card with the co-main event and the featured fight with Barrett. We're like, all right, we'll see how this goes. And then just Barrett and Mo just put on an absolute war. And I think it was such a win for both guys. Obviously, Barrett comes out with the victory, but a lot of the talk before that, I was like, yo, Mo, you're biting off way more than you can chew. You're fighting a guy who was in the UFC, who was, had 21 professional fights, has been at the height of the division going. I think Cage Titans 3, Peter Barrett fought on, made his debut. So this guy's been fighting around for 12 years locally. It was like, Mo, you might have bit off a little more than you can chew a little too early in your career. And he comes out and whips on Peter Barrett. And Peter Barrett whipped on Mo. And there was many times I was like, holy shit, Mo's going to win. And then 2 seconds later, I was like, holy shit, Peter's going to knock him out. And it was just an incredible moment. I tell people I don't have a chance to watch the fights often. I wish I could be Dana White that just comes and sits down and watches the fights. It's just not me. I'm always going to be running around doing something. I'm always going to be looking to talk to somebody, say hi to the fans in the stands, or go in the back room and talk to the fighters. So I'm always running around. But that fight, I stopped and I was just like, wow, insane. So then that wraps up, and I'm in the back with Mo Kanani, and they're talking about stretching him out because he's not feeling good. And I'm trying to deal with all that issue. And I'm like, all right, cool. Doomer and Party's up next. And I'm talking to Mo, and he was on the fence about going to the doctor at the hospital. And we convinced him, like, let's just go to be safe. So now I'm like, all right, cool. We convinced him he's going to hang back here, and then we're going to wait for the ambulance because it wasn't an emergency that he had to go right away. So all right, the Party fights out. Let me go see how they're going to live up to this. There's no way. So I just go walk out. And when I walk out, Joe, the Party, is walking out, and he starts to circle the cage. Now, if you don't know, you must be living on a rock. Him and Jay Perrin have a ton of heat between the two of them. Perrin was our bantamweight champ before he went to the UFC. The Party now captured that, and he's been chirping him ever since. So I come out, and the Party's doing like a lap around the cage instead of getting in the cage. And I start sprinting over because I'm like, oh, shit. Because Perrin was very upfront. And, like, when I see him, like, if he tries anything funky, like, I'll respect you, Mike, but, like, no, I'm not going to let him disrespect me. So I walk out to that, and I'm like, holy shit. I was super, like, nervous. Luckily, the Party turned around. My heart pressure went down a little bit. Then they get in the cage, and again, it was just like, it's like Peter Barrett and Mo El-Kanani put on the Fighter of the Year, probably one of the top 3 fights in Cage Titans history. And the Party and Doom was just like, hold my beer and watch what we do. And they go out and just put on an absolute war. The amount of strikes both guys landed, the amount of, like, grit, determination in Duma. These guys truly put it on for these fans. And it was just like, man, I couldn't ask for a better ending, and the best thing about that was, like, we were there from 12 o'clock. We were watching fights from 12 o'clock to 11:45. And by that point in time, you would think we had, there was 28 fights we watched. I was thinking, oh man, by the end of the night, some of the fans that stayed for both shows or whatever, like our staff, we would be walking out of there like, God damn it, thank God this is over. Very similar to me at Cage Titans 50, where I was like, I'm never doing this again. But we were walking out of Cage Titans 58 like, holy shit, that was insane. That was bananas. That was like, we were such a high after everything we did. We did. And anything that could, I'll be real with you, anything that could have went wrong for Cage Titans 58 behind the scenes that maybe you guys will never see went wrong that show. Like everything. Like I'm talking about like losing the main event. We fly in Luigi Vendramini from the UFC, ex-UFC guy. Huge fight. We lose that on the scales the day before. We set the entire cage, and then we're doing a cage test, and Big Mikey Da Silva broke through the cage floor. So we had to take the entire cage apart, measure new boards, cut new boards. Like anything that could have went wrong, went wrong. But we fixed it. We picked everything up. The show just keeps going. And that night, man, it will be one of my fondest memories because, those guys really put on a show, and I owe a lot to them. And I'm very happy with both those, all four of those guys. I mean, I'm not normally speechless, and it's funny for me to say at this point, when it comes to those four guys, like I'm just speechless. Like they left everybody in awe with their jaws on the ground. Like, holy shit, what did we just witness?
Yeah, I was definitely one of those people that was like, what did I just see happen? And one of the things that made those two fights so exciting was the build up, the press conference, seeing everybody just barking at each other, talking shit. It just made the fight so much more exciting. And then the fight was better than the lead up and the shit talking.
Well, you say that like exactly, like the lead up never ever really lives up to the fight. Like you talk all this shit and you're all excited, and it's like, oh, cool, the fight's over. Like, all right, maybe you talk about like Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. Everybody was talking about the lead up, and it's like the fight happened, and it's just like no one even talks about the damn fight. They talk about all the crap outside the fight, and you're right, like everything leading up to those two fights, they were very, like a great build up, and as great as the build up was, now everybody's talking about the fight, and that is the most important thing. Like, the buildup means nothing when you just deliver a dud of a fight. And these guys went out and backed up every word they said. And it was a fight where I don't think anybody lost. And I know that's cliche and it's kind of garbage in this day and age where everybody gets a medal, but it's just like, I don't think any fighter, a piece of paper might say that they lost, but they gained a ton of experience, ton of fans and notoriety from those fights.